You are in Southeast Wisconsin. What is the world like there in terms of market for microgreens? And in that regard, like as a Black woman running a business there, how is that? I watched one of your YouTube videos and you spoke at the Kenosha Women's Network, and I saw some of your stuff at the farmers market. And so it seems to me like, wow, there's some very cool stuff happening here. So what is that like for you in terms of having a business and doing that in Southeast Wisconsin?
It has been an educational loop. With microgreens, people are like, wait, what is microgreens? What's that? I haven't heard of it. Is it just sprouts? And then having to educate the public and be able to do that successfully has helped me be successful in gaining relationships. And like during the pandemic, people needed a distraction. People needed something to think about and talk about other than what was going on. So me just talking about what I'm doing and what my hopes were, people are like, oh, Lily got on board with it and was really excited. Like, hey, can I do this too? I'm like, yeah, I can teach you how to. But how did you learn about this? I said, try to bring some Canadians. So yeah, the market here is really fresh right now. It's like probably only maybe in my neck of the woods, maybe 2, 3 other businesses doing it,
Right.
but not really like in the markets that I'm at. So I was one of the first. So that helped me with my success so far. Yeah. Like I said, they've been really, Kenosha has really been open to what I'm doing and wanting to know more. And so I have been really grateful.
That's great to hear. I know I have an interview set up for next week with somebody in Ireland, and he's like, people here just don't know about microgreens at all. And so I'm really curious to see what that perspective is like when you maybe don't have a market or you don't think you do.
Mhm.
I did spend some time on the map and I see you're sandwiched in between Milwaukee and Chicago there as well.
Yep.
But it sounds like most of your business and stuff is happening right in Kenosha.
Correct. Yeah. I try to stay local for the simple reason that people have reached out to me in Milwaukee and North Chicago, but I feel like being local allows me to provide those fresh, because that's the whole reason why I got into it, because I wanted to provide a service of delivering fresh greens on spot. So I didn't want to have to freeze anything or ship anything. I want to have that one-on-one connection with my customers. So I want to see my customers' faces and talk about microgreens and see how they're doing and talk about different recipes that they use it for. So I think that is why I just stay within Kenosha. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so let's get into your operation and your system. So, can you tell me a little bit about your growing space and where you produce your microgreens?
Okay. Yeah. So I started off, like I stated in our email, with a wine 3-tier shelf with a couple of basic Home Depot LEDs. And I had 3 varieties of microgreens. I had the sunflower shoots, the radishes, and the pea shoots. I grew them for friends, family, just, hey guys, try this out, see what you think. And they're like, okay, this is pretty cool. I like it. Then I started taking it to work, introducing it to coworkers, and they're like, hey, what's that? I don't know what that is. And then, so I was like, hey, I'm thinking about making this a business. And they're like, oh, let me know. And fast forward during when the pandemic first hit, I was really pivoting on like what to do as far as should I make this more scalable now or should I wait? And I just decided to just go for it. And it worked out in my favor because I ended up getting my first restaurant deal and I scaled up from there. They were so kind to tell people about me, other restaurants about me. So I started getting calls and especially from caterers. So yeah, since then now I converted one of my spare bedrooms into a grow room where right now I have 4 6-tier shelves with lighting, with fan systems, dehumidifier. I've also included, which I've started this year, I started growing mushrooms as well. So I have a tent in there as well with its own ecosphere. its own timer with its own little setup. So that's what I've been using. That's my indoor setup. I also grow other seasonal crops as well. I rent here. So my landlord was gracious enough to let me utilize his whole space in the backyard. So I took that whole backyard into a grow area. So I've been growing various other crops as well for the season. If the restaurant's like, hey, could you grow this? And I'm like, yeah, but it's going to take me this time. And if they're willing to wait for it, I'll grow it. Also, I try to go for my community here because what had happened, they did a great thing. And then with all the fires and riots that went on, literally it was like all the fires really happened like a block from where I stay.
Wow.
So I can think of all of that. So really reaching out to the community and letting them know, hey, if you ever need fresh crops, don't feel like you can't come back here and grab whatever you want. So I as well.
So does your family have a farming background? It sounds like you've got a bit of a knack for growing food.
Yeah, it skipped a lot of generations. My grandpa, he was a farmer, traditional farmer up in Appleton. He had about 40 acres. He hunted. I remember he had the chickens, the pigs, the duck, like he had everything. And I was just like remembering during that time when I used to stay with him, like that was the perfect life to me because it was simple, but it was hard. Like he was a hard worker. And I was just like, I really would love to do that. Unfortunately, he couldn't keep the farm because he got older and none of his children wanted the armor. And unfortunately, I was too young at the time. So he ended up selling it. But then I just thinking back on that, I see where I get it from. I get it from him and just remembering his values and all of what he did.
Nice. I see that I don't have any farming in my family. And so when I talk to some people, you can just see they know what to do. And I'd see it on your Instagram. I saw some photos of mushrooms and I was like, she expanded into mushroom growth. So yeah, I can see there's a real sort of draw to that. That's great. So you mentioned you have 4 6-tier shelves. So what's your like tray capacity per week?
I can grow up to 58 trays. Really, right now, I only grow for my subscribers. But during my market season, I rotate. So I do 2 trays for 1 week and then start on a new tray, the other 2 rack for the following week. So I rotate it off that way. Because it's only me and I get a couple of volunteers, I would like to scale up more, but that's where I'm at as far as capacity growth. So yeah, and it's been working out pretty well. It hasn't, I think I've only ran into only one issue where I had to find extra growth space for a really ridiculous order that I had. But other than that, it's been working out pretty good.
Yeah, I've experienced that before and been in the situation like, even though there's no space, I'm going to find some space.
Right, you always end up finding space somewhere.
And so do you have some microgreens goals? For some people, it's a side hustle. For some people, it's a full-on business. It often transitions from one into the other. Maybe in the short, mid, long term, whatever perspective makes most sense to you. Like, where do you envision going with this?
I envision going with having my own set of land and having a community garden / farming operation within the city. That's where my heart is pulling at right now because food scarcity here is really rampant right now. And I feel like I have an obligation to call to that issue. So yeah, that's where I'm shifting. I'm actually right now looking for a couple of empty lots, like I said, within the area where the riots and the fires took place. So I'm working with the city now to get something underway. So yeah, I'm going to for it.
Is microgreens in many ways a gateway to getting into the ground?
Yeah. Yeah. And I will always keep growing microgreens, but that's never going to stop.
I've never thought of microgreens as a gateway drug before, but now it's just so obvious. So, okay, so this is good. So a couple of like logistical questions. So you talked about you've been at some of my webinars and I know you've used other folks as resources. What has it been like building microgreen skills and getting familiar with it. What was that process like? And what kind of resources did you use all around?
I'm more hands-on, so I basically binge watched all your guys' YouTube videos. I started really getting my hands into it in 2016.
Okay.
Um,
So that goes back 5 years.
so I did a lot of trial runs because I really wanted to streamline it, find the best method for me, really see as far as cost, what medium, what lighting is the best for me, that's within my budget. Yeah, just checking out the market, seeing if there was a market here for this. So yeah, I really took my time before really pulling the trigger.
And so it sounds you're balancing a lot. How do you keep things organized with your microgreen system to stay on top of things?
That has been a challenge. Not gonna lie. But I think once I just get in the groove of growing, like the grow periods is I only did a market every other weekend, and then I have my subscribers. So I think if I did all of that at one time, then yeah, it would be very overwhelming because everything, okay, Wednesday I'm doing deliveries and then harvest day Friday for Saturday's market. So it balanced in with all the other things that I'm doing. So it really wasn't that bad. It was just making sure that, hey, I checked this or I got to clean trays this week. It's just those little things that I have to remember to do.
Yeah, it's a very good
Later.
point. And I have these memories of my early years of it being like dark, like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday and going, oh my God, I have to. And I remember I'm already in my pajamas and I'm getting up and going out and my production site was somewhere else. And it's
Yeah.
because if you don't sow that crop, you don't have a crop to harvest.
No, you don't.
It's very tight windows. Okay, good to know. And this one last question on this. Is there something, and you actually don't have to answer this, is there something with your business that you are unsatisfied with? Like it's just something you just can't get to flow or to work or to it's tedious. Like I'm curious where there's just a part of your business where you're like, hate that thing.
I guess really honing in on this right now is the help aspect. Like right now, I have family that comes when they want to and volunteers that come in and really just being accommodating because they are volunteers and trying to scale everything to where I'm able to get the help for the bigger things that I absolutely need help with. So that way I can continue doing my other tasks as well. And that has been the biggest challenge and the biggest, but hopefully here I will have a plan set in place and to be able to address that and streamline that better.
And so is your system, whatever this means, profitable? Is it worth continuing to do from a financial perspective?
Oh yes, most definitely. The first year I was just grateful to make anything. But now I'm starting to see, oh, okay, like, all right, I'm making some money here. Not a lot, but I'm happy. I'm satisfied and it's keeping me afloat and been really helpful during the pandemic when I really wasn't working at the time, but just doing the microgreen business that really carried me throughout.
Right. And is it that? And I had a situation when I started out, it was just me and same thing. And I was at a point where hiring somebody wasn't possible because then I wouldn't make any money, but I wasn't selling and I knew I had to scale up. It sounds like it's a similar situation. If you had to hire somebody, all your wage would basically go to them. And so that would mean really scaling up to make it viable in that regard. So is that a similar situation with you?
And that's where I'm at right now and seeing how I can do this budget wise without really hurting anything else that I got going on.
Yeah.
So.
It was interesting you talking about your trajectory. You started off with your one shelf, you scaled up, and I went through your Instagram and I could see that. There's the first picture of an early shelf. I'm like, oh, that's cute. And then I'm kind of going through the photos and time. And then all of a sudden there's these beautiful shelves. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the setup. And so that trajectory becomes very clear. And I think that's actually really useful for people to see because sometimes you're like, I can't get this cool shelf, so I can't start. And Seems like you just went with the quill shelf would be nice, but let's just get a shelf and some lights and get at it.
If practical, really, I was just seeing if this was even a thing I could do here, seeing if there was a market for it, seeing if people are excited about this. I was like, why spend thousands of dollars not even knowing if it's going to work? And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get it mixed up. Like everybody in the world, like you guys are in Canada. I'm like, okay, what your guys doing in Canada, will it work here in Wisconsin? Or how will I be making $200,000 a year? Or would I be good with just making $25,000 a year? Asking those questions and really being realistic about it, I think is really important when coming into this business.
Yeah. And it's good, obviously, if you've got less investment and a smaller market and it's a smaller scale, there's a lot less risk. $200,000 a year, that's your full-time job. And if, say, pandemic hits, then that could, maybe it helps, but chances are it's going to be difficult.
Right.
Yeah. So I can already see, though, your potential growth trajectory here. So we're going to do another one of these in a couple of years for sure. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about multiple jobs, balancing this idea of having a microgreens business that you're growing. You were not yet going all in. And so you're doing multiple things. So can you talk a little bit about the many things you are doing at the same time as producing microgreens?
Yeah. I'm working now as an accountant assistant for a friend of mine who has a business in assistant living. I'm also have another small business, which is it's mostly out. I build and make herbal salves, tinctures, ointments, and then I ship it out. I have a partner in Atlanta and he sells it all. And I also have some clientele here as well, but I basically just make it and just ship it out. So that's not too bad as far as time that I could squeeze that in on a Sunday afternoon, just make a bulk in this, get ready for shipment Monday or Tuesday. So that's really more of my passive type of business, which is going very well. But then, like I said, I am working full time. And it's funny how I met my friend who I'm working for. We met at this women networking where we basically all entrepreneurs get together. And that's when I was talking about my microgreens business and what I was doing before. And she just loves the aspect that I am an entrepreneur and she understands what it takes. And she really was like, been really supportive of me. And she was just like, are you looking to get back in the job force? And I'm like, yeah, I really am looking to get back in the job force to help continue my business and to help continue on my path where I would want to go. And she was like, come work for me. She's like, we're going to be very flexible. You let me know you need anything. Basically, she's like, be sure you can handle this. And I think that helps as well, like getting into with someone that is an entrepreneur and that I met on that level to understand and support what I'm doing made it all the easier to balance all of these.
Yeah. And you covered like 9 questions there, which is great because one of the challenges often in having multiple jobs is balancing those things with each other. And it sounds like you've got some flexibility to be able to do that. Like, hey, I need this half day off to do this. I need a bit more time here. So it sounds like that flexibility is what makes this all possible.
Yeah. And I think just communicating that with your employer or whatever it is, most people will be understanding of what you're doing. 9 times out of 10, they want you to succeed in whatever you're doing. It's just communicating that in an effective way. So that way you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping them as well. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. I know some people I talk to, my job isn't flexible enough, or maybe they don't think it's flexible enough, but they haven't really pushed those boundaries. So it's interesting. So, because it sounds like this, again, just seeing your flow in social media and some of your talk at the Kenosha Women's Network, it's like, seems these things came to you in many ways. I don't know how to phrase it without sounding too wishy-washy, but you put out a call to the universe and the universe said, yeah, here you go.
No, for sure. For sure.
Now, is that kind of how it happened? Did you set an intention to be able to have this flexible lifestyle? Imagine you work your ass off, but
Mhm.
you also have this flexibility that allows you to shape shift between these different jobs to keep balance in your life.
Right. It was very important to me to be able to do what I love and to set goals for myself and to really focus on what it is I want to do and what I want to accomplish. With that all entails, everything has been a blessing because I had that and I was like, stick with this and with this idea of, yes, I want to be more flexible with my schedule. I want to take on things that are meaningful to me and just go with it. So that has been the motivation and driving force to all of this.
So previous to that, then, did you have more of a rigid, flexible 9 to 5, 10 to 4 work schedule sort of thing? Is that sort of the world you're coming from, which a lot of people are in? Like you work these
Yeah.
hours and that's that. Is that where you were coming from?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was coming from. It was, I loved the work that I was doing before because I worked as victim advocate for domestically abused women. But that line of work, you're dedicating everything you got to that. And there's like really no room for anything else. And I basically really had to make a really hard decision. Do I want to continue doing this or do I want to venture off with everything else that I really want and the goals that I have set for myself? When the pandemic hit, I was let go. So that was like my door opening into, okay, is this now the time? Is it going to be now or never? There's so many things running through my mind because I'm like, it's appropriate right now. I was just like, you know what? I was talking to my mom and she's like, just go for it. Just see what happens. She's like, if it doesn't work out, fine. Then at least you'll know it didn't work out. Or you might have to do this later down the line when all this goes away. And then I'm glad I had her for that support because everybody else, you're crazy. Why would you do this right now?
And so the loss of your previous job, was that pandemic related?
Yes.
It's a good example where that position is gone. You need to pivot. And so did you have some of the stuff in mind before then, or did you have to brainstorm? I guess you said you started thinking about microgreens in 2016. So
Yeah.
was it just there waiting for
Mhm.
this opportunity?
It's just more of a when I'm going to jump off. Like, when is this now? Is this now? Like I actually got established in 2019, December of 2019. I'm like, hey, by March, April, I'll be ready for the world. In March. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah, it was really crazy. It was a whirlwind, but I started with $500 of equipment and then I just scaled up from there with using a lot of the money that I had from taxes and savings and all of which is approximately $4,000 set up. So yeah, it is very possible to start off with a shoestring budget and really scale up.
Yeah.
Possible.
And one of the things I really like about microgreens, because I remember my early days as well, is what I call the seed to sale cycle. You can spend a lot of time getting set up, but within 8 days
Mhm.
of your first crop, you can be collecting revenue. So there's
Exactly.
not a big delay where some businesses you spend 2 years in a startup phase before money comes in. And then you're like, oh, okay.
Exactly.
So here's a question then. Had you not been let go of your position because of COVID, do you think would you have made the leap and said, I need to give notice, I'm going to go do this thing? Like, it seems that's a scarier thing to do because you don't
Mhm.
have to do it.
Exactly.
Will I willingly give up this secure thing to do this maybe questionable thing that would make me feel real good?
Yeah, for me, I probably wouldn't have been brave enough to do, in all honesty, because I loved the women, I loved the job, because it was very meaningful. It was just like it was more of an emotional tie to that position, which made it even harder. So yeah, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, then yeah, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Has your perspective on work in general changed now that you've shifted from this steady job to these multiple things and balancing things out?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like you you see so many things. I've been learning so much. It's like the biggest thing that I've learned so far is you are in control of your outcome. Like you're the driving force. If you want to make money, you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And
Really?
yeah, there's been times where I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get those trays started. And while I'm soaking trays, and you have to be motivated to be a self-starter. Like you have to. And that's what my biggest takeaway is. Like you can't procrastinate, can't relax, because as soon as you do, you're like, you're behind.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yes,
But
it does. So it sounds like you've got a good balance, and I can visualize going to the accountant's office and say, hey, can I go from 5 days a week to 4 days a week? Or saying to your partner in Atlanta, hey, can we shift this day to this day just for this week and stuff like that? Like what I'm thinking about is this idea of, it seems like that is a possible trajectory. You go from accounting from 5 days to 4 days, 4 days to 3 days, 3 days to 2 days. Oh, can I go back to 4 days for a while? As things go, do you imagine that? Or how do you imagine, because it seems you're on a trajectory, how do you imagine the next 2 to 3 years playing out as you continue to build your microgreens business? You've got now this mushroom cultivation happening as well. And it seems like maybe the other partnership you have could be something that grows also. So what does your trajectory look like?
really good question. I'm just happy with any growth, and I'm just really going with the flow at this time and just seeing where I land. But my biggest goal right now is to have that piece of land, to have that community garden going for the community. Like that is my main focus, and where everything else ties in, that's what's going to be in a nutshell. But I'm not, because of the pace and everything starting settle down somewhat post pandemic. Now it's like I can really hone in some of my skill set, and now I'm learning to grow other crop varieties. So certain things that I really couldn't do because I was just like, okay, I just need to get this product out here. Just need to get this product out here. Now I'm like, okay, I can take my time now and really explore other things, which the mushrooms came about because nobody here was growing mushrooms. And people were like, we had a mushroom guy, but he's like mushrooms. I'm like, I think I can. Let's see. If I can do this and if I can tie it with the microgreens, then we'll see. And that has been really surprising even to myself, like how each one goes hand in hand, because mushrooms take no longer than 8 days as well. Like it depends on the variety of plants that you're growing right now. But yeah, if I need to cultivate some for a couple weeks out, then grow time after that is like 8 to 9 days. It's all right in line with the microgreens. So I'm like, yeah, why not?
That's great. Yeah, finding things that fit in really almost seamlessly with what you're doing.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's shift over a little bit here and talk about bootstrapping. Now, I was thinking about this a little bit this morning, and I have this idea of what bootstrapping is. And then I thought, maybe I should check what Google thinks bootstrapping is. And I'm like, oh, this is what bootstrapping is? And it was a piece of what I was thinking. So I'm going to ask you what is bootstrapping to you?
To me, it's just taking whatever you have and making it work for yourself and being able to turn over a profit or expand your business or start a business. It's really just saying, like, hey, this is what I have available. And it may not be starting off at a corporate level of funds, or whether it's I don't have all this fancy equipment, or it's just utilizing what you have, working within your means, and finding a plan and using that plan and pushing forward. I think that is core principle, in my opinion. At least that's what it's been like for me.
Yeah. So this is good because that's my idea of bootstrapping as well, is very much, I wrote it down as like less than typical solutions and using what is on hand.
Yeah.
And sometimes using what is on hand is a step towards the this is what you should do, or this is maybe the optimum system. But not having the optimum system doesn't seem like a very good reason to not try or to not start.
Exactly. Exactly. Because then you'll never know if
Exactly.
it will work.
One of my questions is, why did you take this approach? And from our talking, I think often the bootstrapping approach is like either you don't have a whole ton of money to just buy everything outright, or you're not willing to go to investors, right? You're not willing to get a loan, or it just seems like I don't know, there's something about that always makes me feel a little bit not quite right. So I'm curious about what the biggest challenges were for you with this bootstrapping approach.
For me, it was time and seeing, like, it was basically all of the above, which you have mentioned. It was, okay, I don't have a lot of funds. Okay. At the time, because I was still working my full-time position as a victim advocate. So it's like, okay, am I going to invest all this money up front and it does not work? Is there a market for this? Will I have any customers? It was a lot of factors that played into this. And I'm just like, just start small. And if it doesn't work, then you just have food for yourself and friends and family. And that was more of my attitude coming into this. Like, just get my feet wet just a little bit and just see where it goes.
Well,
But also just being more frugal and saying like, hey, do I really need that fancy shelf, or really do I need that $600 lighting system? Do I really need? And that's why I said, no, you don't need it. It'd be nice to have all those things because it would probably make your life a lot easier, but no, you don't need that. And that was basically the approach that I took.
are there some particular challenges you found with that approach? One thing that comes to mind in my early days of production is this isn't quite how I want to be doing things. And with microgreens, for me, it's always about like hygiene and sanitation.
Mm.
And I had to be very particular about doing some things because I didn't have the equipment. So I wonder where you found the biggest challenges in that were.
Usually in the spring and summer, I can go right outside and do everything. Have all my tables lined up, all the trays just lined up, and just boom, just down the road. And I don't have to worry about mess. I don't have to worry about too much of the sanitation, some, but not as much. But then during the fall and winter, oh no, I am in a 900 square foot upper unit without a lot of space. I have to be real smart about this. And how am I going to do this? And time wise, how long is this going to take? And yeah, it has been challenging navigating through those things. But I think now I found a system that actually works for me. So
that's good. Because I know for me in the past, sometimes one of the consequences of bootstrapping is an activity takes much longer than
yes,
if you have more space, if you have, a different setup. And
exactly.
that really plays in with you've already got a limited amount of time. And so if you're taking a half-hour task and turning it into 2 hours, then you get this risk of burnout. And burnout you can experience even when you just have one job. So is that something you have experienced? Like, how close have you come to burnout at this point?
I've burned out. I think I burnt out during the first year. It was July and August were my biggest months. Like, I was so happy, blissful, because I'm like, yay, I'm making money, orders are coming in, but I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have time to do all of this. And everything was just happening back to back. And it was just like, I need help. I need help. And then that's when I started reaching out to other organizations and saying, hey, we got any college horticulture students? Got anybody willing to do a couple of hours? Reached out to family. My family has been so supportive of me and really have come through. Like my brothers and sisters, like they helped me and that alleviated a lot of stress. Just having an actual team helping from just cleaning trays. How cleaning trays can be just whole. If one thing I can do is never touch a tray, have to clean a tray ever again, I will be happy. That is success to me. Just assigning that task to somebody else, I would be so happy. But, but yeah, I have experienced burnout and just realizing, hey, okay, things are going well, but now it's time to get some help and get a team together so that way I can continue because your health is very important and can't be burnt out and then continue because that's when you start making mistakes. And I learned that early on. It's okay to ask help. Usually I won't ask. I'll be like, oh, I don't know. And having to learn it's okay to ask. You have to ask and be real about your situation. I think that's another thing too, because as much as I would love to pay, it's just at that time it wasn't realistic for me and my setup. Like I couldn't afford to pay anyone a salary. And if you explain that to people, 9 times out of 10, they're understanding and want to help and just want to learn what you're doing
Yeah.
anyway. So the trade-off is you learn a new skill and you make new connections and then pay down. And if you find really good people, when you are able to hire, you'll think, hey, this person did a really good job. Hey, why don't you come on back? Like, I can give you a low salary. So it's things like that. And I always say it's important to be transparent, be real about where you're at in this journey. And you'll be, like I said, you'll be very surprised at how many people are understanding and will support you.
Yeah, I remember the first time we hired a summer student to just clean trays. It was so satisfying in some ways. And then other times I'm like, "Oh, I feel so bad for that kid. I'm going to clean all the." But having cleaned, I figure I've cleaned about 50,000 trays at this point in my life. I'm okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that came to mind there was, and I'm just thinking a little bit about wrapping things up here, is you've got your Solve partnership, you've got your accountant assistant work, you've got your microgreens. All that can lead to burnout, even though a lot of it's very satisfying. Do you also have something that can take you away from that? I know for many years, microgreens was all I did. And I started to resent it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I can go trail running or skiing or just do anything else. So, have you got some mechanisms like that in your life to avoid that burnout and enjoy other things?
Oh, yeah. Which is why I decided to change the backyard into a garden because that has always been my therapy. Garden, just getting in the dirt, barefoot. And I never wanted to lose that. And I never wanted to turn this business into something that I hated down the line. So I always was like wanting to always have that connection to the ground, always wanting to always have it as a peace and enjoyable thing because that has always been my therapy. And I also take time with my son and we go on little trips and do things. I do a lot of things with him one-on-one. Or if it's just me just binge watching a Netflix for a day, like you do have to learn to turn off and learning that it's okay to take some time out for yourself is very important. And that's a good thing. Like I never wanted to be to a point where it's like, oh, I love this, but now I'm hating it because of this. No, incorporating things that you love about it and always having that reminder of why you love it is very important to have while you're in this business. Because for instance, like anytime I'm doing a task that I cannot stand, I'll just go in my little garden and just sit and woosah for a couple of minutes. Be like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. And then get right back to the task at hand. So I think always incorporating little reminders like why you're doing this and why you love it is important and never losing sight of that. Because I know it can be very easy to lose sight of why or fall out of love with something that you're doing. I see that happening. And because you're getting so frustrated, you're so caught up in the business aspect of it and you forget the passion side of it. And it's just very important to take time out as well for yourself, to give yourself a reminder.
Absolutely. And one thing that's, as I'm reflecting on some of the things you've said, and there's always a bigger picture, and it's really easy to get caught up in the business. But one thing you talked about a lot here was relationships. You had a good relationship with your business partner in Atlanta, your accountant employer, your landlord, people at the farmer's market. And
Right.
so it sounds like you've done a really good job of not forgetting about and your family, you mentioned, like not forgetting the people around you and trying to do this thing that you really want to do, but rather integrating them into it.
Exactly. And it takes a multitude of people to run a business. And that's another key takeaway is you have to have good, solid relationships. It's very important. Otherwise, you're not going to thrive. You're not going to survive.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. Could you pass on tray washing to your son?
I have. But he's the boss. He's like, Mom, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this over here.
Oh,
So
yes.
he's the boss. That's the boss.
My son was born like my first year of production. And for
Um,
7 or 8 years, he was like filling trays with soil and doing things. And now I think if he ever has to wash another tray or look at another tray, he's going to do something to me in my sleep. So it backfired trying to get him into the farming mindset.
Yeah, I think I created a little entrepreneur, so he thinks he's just the boss.
So we've covered a lot of stuff there. In terms of wrapping things up, is there something that you wanted to add about, is there something you want to throw in there about what you're doing and how you're doing it?
Um, I know you had mentioned diversity and me being a Black woman in a more white male dominant business. And I don't know. I guess my biggest thing is how can we bridge the gap more? I know this platform right here will open a lot of doors, but what do you think, like, for yourself, like how we can get more? Because like I said, I just watched you guys on YouTube.
I think there's some responsibility, I say on my part. I think when I reach out to talk to people, I want to be reaching out to a diversity of people. And I was thinking about this and looking at the interviews I've set up. I have a lot of interviews set up with white men. And it's because, like, when I go through my list of contacts, that's who they are. And so I think there's that aspect, but there's also, it's more than that. For me, it's a lot of reflection. And I follow, and Canadians follow very closely what's happening in the US. There's the past couple of years has been very intense. But here in Canada, our relationship with it is with the Indigenous populations. And it's as problematic. And there's these deeply embedded ideas in us, in me, and I feel them.
Yeah.
And I put a good amount of time into really reflecting on what I believe and my perspective on life and having a heightened awareness of the privilege that I have. And so through that, I hope it's part of the process. But the other thing for me is like hearing a diversity of stories. And
Mm.
your story is very similar to my story. My bootstrapping was a credit card and it took years to pay that off. And sure, people have differences, but there's so much that we have in common. And that's something that I really try to focus on because it makes it harder to discriminate. It makes it harder to place somebody in a bubble in some sort of category when you can find commonality.
I agree.
So hopefully that's a step to moving forward. And there's a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I really enjoyed talking with Lily. If you want to learn more about what Lily is up to, check her out on Instagram at Short Route Urban Farm.